Welcome everybody to the town of Manlius for our planning board meeting of June the 28th. As we begin all of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Listen, would you like to address us relative to our public hearing?
Yep, and I'm just gonna come over to the podium because this little machine in the center of the table is what is allowing our participants from home to be able to participate. So I'll just say it now. If you come to speak tonight, if you're called on during the public hearing, just come up to the podium. That way we can record it accurately and everyone can hear what you have to say. For participants at home on Zoom, if you can change your name to your first and last name so we know who you are, we know that you're not going to Zoom bomb us, that would be helpful. It is also what our planning board secretary needs to be able to legally record your comments into the minutes. Additionally, if folks in the room, and I know it's tempting, but even the slightest bit of whispering, because we have to have the air conditioning on tonight, will reduce the audio quality. So if I could just ask everybody to kind of keep that to an absolute minimum. And then Zoom participants, when you are ready to participate, when the chairman opens the meeting for public comment, you're just going to go ahead and raise your hand. There's a raise hand function, or you can submit your comments in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you, Allison. Folks, the first item on the agenda is approval of our minutes of our last meeting conducted on June the 14th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 14th.
Second motion by Richard, second by Michael Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved as written. The next item on the agenda is an application. It's an initial presentation for a 2-lot subdivision, Medsac Sale Kit. This is for property located at North Manlius Road, Kirkville, tax map number 70-1-8.1. Is there somebody here to speak on behalf of the application? Or is our town engineer going to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
I know what your question is, so let me answer before we start.
Okay.
As you all know, we're in a period of transition with the codes office. So Mr. Salkick came in at the end of May. If you look, his application is actually dated 5/24/21. So over the last 2 weeks, Lisa and I have met with Ned. We've looked at his subdivision. It's a simple 2-lot subdivision. He's had it in here for nearly a month. We met on the site. We looked at his plans. We thought it was applicable to get it in front of you folks sooner rather than later. This is the initial night that you've seen it. Our recommendation would be that you act on it, set a public hearing so that we can expedite Mr. Stelman's simple 2-lot subdivision. He's got a couple house structures if you look. Michael and I went to the site, basically farms the site, whatnot. He wants to build a duplex house, which is permissible here. He has the drawings done. He'll probably be submitting those later this week. He needs health department approvals and the subdivision so that he gets more flexibility to take the 2 lots going forward. That's why we got it here last week on short notice, but we thought it was pretty simple. We thought we should expedite it.
You know what I was going to ask?
Because I know.
Anyone have questions regarding the subdivision?
And he does have a seeker and a seeker line. I think so. Yeah.
Just one more question. There's some structures on lot, I guess it's lot number 2. Do they meet the setbacks?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, we visited the site.
Okay.
And he has 2 or 3 sheds. He farms a lot of sheep. He has some goats, some chickens. He does some corn, tomatoes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Thanks, Doug.
If any board members have any questions that Doug might be able to answer, please ask now. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing. So moved.
Second,
Motion made by Arnie, second by Richard,
at the next meeting?
at the next meeting,
July 12th.
July the 12th.
Okay.
Any opposed? I need all in favor first.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Public hearing is hereby scheduled for July the 12th. Prior to doing the next item on the agenda, it's my understanding that Mr. Deere would like to speak to us from the town board, because what he has to say would affect the next two items on the agenda. Mr. Deere? Oh. Caitlin Priesel.
Yeah.
So from the town board.
I've seen a lot of familiar faces in the room from last Wednesday's board meeting. We did have quite a bit at the top about our open podium section about upcoming solar projects. And then we did have an agenda item where we talked about some of the things that we've all been working on together as far as cleaning up our process and making sure we have the right partners. And so at that meeting, we were feeling pretty confident that we weren't going to need a moratorium, but after doing some more reflection, talking to some experts, talking to some folks on the planning board, it looks like the best option for us is going to be to consider a moratorium. We were thinking about 6 months. This will give us time to go into the comprehensive plan and start there and really ask the community, where do we think solar should be? We can also ask the experts, where can solar be? Because it needs a certain hookup, it needs certain type of pitch and all this other stuff. And so by doing that, we're going to be able to give this board more tools to essentially decide whether or not a solar development makes sense in a given area. Did you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin Priesel. I'm one of the town councilors here in the town of Manlius, and I'd like to thank the planning board for having us here this evening so that we can help to work together on this incredibly important topic. So there's quite a long list that I put together with the help of some of my colleagues in renewable energy last week in terms of the things that really need to be considered before we felt confident that the town is where we want it to be, so that we're not on our back heel responding to these different solar requests, whether they be a zone change or a site plan review, a pilot agreement, or whatever the circumstance might be. And so in consideration of that, we wanted to open up the conversation about whether or not the planning board was interested in a moratorium on solar. I am a huge advocate for renewable energy and environmental sustainability, as many of you are already aware. But that doesn't mean that we can't be mindful and strategic as we're putting that plan together to make sure that we're putting the solar projects where it is appropriate and framing them in a way that would be to the best service of our community. So a couple things that we'll be looking to review our current solar code. Some of our neighboring communities have put together updates that they've passed with their solar code. The town of Pompey, for example, just added an overlay district, which the town board attorney, Tim Ferteski, helped to put together. And we've also got the pilot agreement with OSIDA. So that would be, for those of you in the room who don't know, payment in lieu of taxes. And OSIDA is the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency. And they help to put together these kind of tax equity packages for developers. And then, of course, we have the comprehensive plan that we're working on, which will include most prominently a land use plan. So all of these things would be, all these things and more need to be done. Would it be of interest to the planning board to consider a moratorium such that we have some time to do these important things mindfully and not rushed? Or is that not of interest to the planning board? And you're willing to work with us to get all these sustainable ducks in a row in an expedited fashion so that we can make sure that the planning board is best prepared to handle these projects as they come forward.
What we really need is a comprehensive plan. And unless there is a moratorium, we have no alternative but to move forward on all applications presently before us. So if you need time to develop the comprehensive plan, then the moratorium would assist us and it would hopefully give us more guidance as to what the town's vision of the future is relative to solar panels.
And in considering moratorium, would it be the planning board's opinion to include the currently 2 proposed projects? Or to essentially grandfather them in outside of the moratorium, that they move forward, but we don't take further obligations?
No.
If I could speak. That really isn't our decision, that would be the town board's decision.
Well, that's
As
We're,
they-
yeah, we're asking for your feedback, your
Yeah.
input.
I think at this point in time, it makes sense for the moratorium. Because we've approved 5 projects, not a shovel's gone on the ground. We have 2 that are before us. We have another one that's coming, it's in the bullpen, getting ready to come to us. And the problem is that we don't have this, don't take offense to this, but we don't have the expertise to fully understand these projects. I mean, we've been around them, we've discussed them, we've done our research, but we need some outside expertise to help us determine whether or not these things make sense. I do not want to wake up, and I've said this to a lot of people, I don't want to wake up 8 years from now and look around Manlius and say, what the heck did we do? So we need. I think we need renewable energy. There's no doubt that's where we're headed, but it's got to be responsible.
So Rich, just to follow up on John's question.
Go ahead.
Do you want to include in the moratorium the projects that are currently in front of the planning board? That's John's question, or do you not, or do you want to not include them?
If you're asking me, my answer is yes. I don't control the board, I'm just one vote, but for Rich Rossetti, it's a yes.
I think a suggestion would be that you poll the board right here, right now, as to whether they feel they would like this to go retroactive as of applicants already in process or just future. Maybe that'll give you some better
Well,
understanding.
I can give kind of the framework that we're thinking, and then you can let me know if that sounds like it works for all of you. Our plan in discussing the different details of the moratorium would be to include the projects before the board that have not received site plan approval. So those would be included in the moratorium. So I think that would include the project that's up for discussion here tonight.
Yeah.
So that was our plan. So if you've received site plan approval, we also were planning to grandfather in the town's landfill project, as that won't really be a part of the discussion in terms of these other qualifying factors.
Does that sound good to the planning board?
Let me understand that.
Are there any projects that have been contracted? They are moving forward and we're locked in.
I don't know if I'm in a position to take questions from the general public during the planning board meeting.
Three different.
I would not open it up to the public.
No, I would.
Yeah, this isn't a public hearing, but I'm happy to correspond with anyone via email.
And we do have a detailed file with the current status of all the projects. But I think in particular, we were talking about grandfathering the landfill solar site, which we've already signed a lease for, that's already moving forward. And it's in a place where I think we all agree, it's a good place for solar.
Just to let you know, they came before us with a site plan. And we could not review it because I've never seen the lease. I don't know if anybody else on this board has seen the lease. I have not seen the lease. You have.
For
Is
which
it-
project?
Pardon?
For which one?
For the landfill. There's a lease that's been signed between the town
There's
and, who was it?
Omni River, Abundant Solar.
On the solar. I haven't seen it, so we can't do a site plan. So when you say, should we grandfather, I don't know what grandfather, so I
It
can't
means
tell
that
you.
we would continue, that project would continue to move forward outside of the moratorium. It's on a landfill. I don't think that that's the concern of the public.
You're talking about the one on Bowman, right? Bowman,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the town's project, so we have control over that project, so it felt like it.
If you want to know my thoughts, I'm with Richard. I think things that are in progress right now that have not yet been approved, there's no reason to let them slip through. If our position is going to be to the contrary, I think we should make them applicable to anything that's in progress and it's not yet been approved. And so what you do with the town is going to be up to the town board.
And Rich, so.
And I'll jump in and say, I agree 100% with that. The problem, and it's more of a legal issue, and I'm not an attorney, but if we say to 2 projects that are in the works, we're gonna put a stop on those until we do But yet this other third project on the landfill, we're gonna let move
We talked
forward.
with Tim Protesky, he said it's fine to write it that way, and Jamie's nodding her head as well, so I think
Yes,
that-
yes, it's
okay.
within the prerogative of the town board, as to what they put the moratorium on. There's a
Okay.
lot of
But
flexibility
we
on
still
that.
have site plan review because we haven't seen the lease, we haven't seen the site plan, so.
Well, we'll see
Okay.
that.
My
All right.
only,
All right, yeah, so,
I'm in favor of the moratorium. I think we should definitely grandfather the landfill project. I know it may not appear on the agenda. I feel like we're further along with the CVE project and we've come a long way with that one. So I can't say yes or no right now if I feel like that should be included in the moratorium.
The plans that
The
have
other one is-
received site plan review that you've already approved, you're okay with those moving forward?
No.
Okay.
there's 5 projects that we've approved, 2 that are in the works that we have not approved.
Rich, you have 2 projects that are expiring in August of 21.
Okay.
Those should be put in the moratorium.
So if that expires, they would then be subject to reapplying in the moratorium.
That's right.
Days, but
That's correct.
in the moratorium.
This is not open to the public yet. This is a different topic. We're gonna have a public hearing before we're done this evening on solar, but this is not part of the public hearing.
I think what that comment was about is that when we approved the special use permit, on a couple of these projects, maybe 3, that they had to come before, well, they had to go to the planning and development, pull a building permit within 1 year.
Yes.
And I think that's what the comment is, that the 1 year expires in August. I don't know that for a fact.
And then they wouldn't be able to come back. They'd
And then they'd
come
have to
back and
start
apply.
back, they'd have to start over.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
But there's one of those projects that we extended the time on. Remember, they had made the case about the finances, you know, that
That was the length of time for the special use. We went from 7 to 15. It wasn't, I don't believe it was on the 1 year to pull the building. It was on the extension of the special use permit from 7 to 15. I may be wrong, Fred, but that's.
In this period of time where the town board is working on the moratorium, we can put together a chart of where everything is, right, John? And then they can take a look at it and see.
Yeah. And
There's a lot of flexibility in the moratorium. There's a lot of legal leeway. And I know that Tim Fortesky is working on that carefully with the town board. And I understand that the feedback they're looking for right now is, right now, they're saying that they're inclined to keep those other projects, you know, moving forward, but anything that's not approved or is about to come forward to us is I think what they're saying may be fair game, and that's the question, if I'm not mistaken, so.
I don't know, you have just a general opinion?
I'm in favor of the moratorium. I think we've had, you know, we kind of made our own chaos in this particular case, but we don't have to continue it. So I think it's time for a timeout. How many projects have we approved already? 5? 5. I was thinking 5. And they would move forward. I mean, they're approved.
Unless the town board votes to nullify. They can-
Well,
they can
not nullify, but just put a stay on it, like you can't pull a building permit. That's feasible. And they may not anyway, because, and there's timeframes. So they might be stuck in their own, if they need extensions of timeframes and it's a moratorium running, then this board would be without power to extend them.
But if we approve them and they started spending money, I don't know whether they've started construction on any of them or not.
So the way that the large scale solar projects work, I would never have expected that these projects would have been shovel ready. That's not how they work. They really work in reverse of traditional brick and mortar buildings. So I've heard the comment a couple of times, like they haven't even broke ground yet. They haven't put a shovel in the ground. That's not how these projects work. They take a long time. So it's not surprising that they haven't broken ground. And I don't think that that's indicative of their lack of commitment. The process for developing one of these commercial projects, if they get the site plan like that, they need that to be able to start the development process. So it's, for anyone who's familiar with real estate development, those projects take years, and with a brick and mortar building, Typically, that's the last part. So I could understand why that would cause confusion among the planning board, but it's not actually how the projects work.
And they're well aware that their special permits, if they expire during the moratorium, they would then be subject to the moratorium, and if
Come
not,
back again and start over.
exactly, yeah. And then for the ones that are already moving forward, the moratorium will last 6 months, they'll know where they're at, and those projects can continue if they've gotten all the paperwork done and moving that forward.
I'll
I
just
guess-
make one other comment. I think we need a moratorium also because I think there's a lot of false information out in the community right now. And I think we, as planning board and town board, if we can get factual information out to our community members too, that would be
And
very
we do
helpful.
have the comprehensive plan, which is happening right now, so we'll likely go back to B&L and say, hey, can we move the solar conversations, the solar education up? That way, at the end of the moratorium, we have a much better idea of where the residents would like to see solar and where they would.
Right.
Based upon what you're hearing, the consensus is moratorium is appropriate.
I'd like to hear Arnie's thoughts. I haven't heard Arnie's speak.
There's a lot of moving parts to this, and one of them is the assessment or the pilot. There are exemptions now for solar arrays. There are exemptions for farms. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is the proposed tax law, which is going to change next year, about how these things are going to be assessed. We're going to get less because from what I understand, the New York State lawmakers, eager to push solar forward, are going to make it more attractive to the developers by lowering the value of the taxes that are going to come back to the town. In other words, people say, well, what does a town get out of all this? The answer is going to be not much. And next year it's going to be less. I'm in favor of the moratorium, and I think we should be prepared to extend it beyond the 6 months if necessary.
Just to answer that question, that's the whole idea behind the pilot. It's to negotiate with the developers to get something more than we would in real estate taxes.
They're
So-
worried, Rich, that if we negotiate too high a pilot, we'll send the developers away and we won't get our solar arrays. The one thing I've asked for, I haven't seen yet, I wanted to see the contracts between the developer, NYSERDA, National Grid, and the landowners. I have a feeling that our piece of this is so tiny that if we asked for a very substantial pilot, they would jump at the chance to give it to us. I don't want to give away the town of Manlius's tax base because that's the last thing we've got. And I'd like to preserve as much of it as I can and preserve it for the benefit of the town.
And I know we are planning to partner with OSIDA so that we have, the best foot forward when it comes to negotiating those pilots.
And again, during the moratorium, this can be studied a little bit better and not be.
I think there's a study group that's meeting on the 6th to talk more about this. So, we'll start there and, we'll keep constant communication. So if the moratorium does need to be extended, you folks let us know and we'll try to get that to happen. And if we feel prepared come probably December or January, we can let that go, but we'll have all the tools we need to properly oversee this.
One thing I'd like to mention too before we wrap up, even if these developers wanted to, and even if the town wanted to, and even if everyone in this room wanted to cover every farm and every piece of land we could with solar, you can't do that. The wires are only so big. I mean, you can look out the window. This appears to be 3-phase power because it's got 3 wires, but I'm not an engineer, so I couldn't say for sure. The substations that we have in the town of Manlius can only process so much electricity. And so very quickly, with just a few of these large scale arrays, we would be maxed out. So there's no need to fear every hill and every piece of land getting covered with solar. It just doesn't work that way. So what we as the board are doing right now, and that, excuse me, with the time that we potentially could have if we move forward with the moratorium, is we will be doing a solar study to identify where is the 3-phase power, where is the room on the substation, which pieces of property are big enough, which pieces of property are, we need renewable energy because of climate change. So we have to be mindful about how we're moving that forward.
We have one question, Drea. It's our understanding that your next board meeting is scheduled for July 14th.
Yes.
Would you be able to give us an indication right after that, whether it's been approved or not?
Mr. Protesti will be presenting a law.
Jim, we need to do a public hearing for.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
if it comes to the board at your next meeting on the 14th, then you
We'll
looked at
schedule the
it, then
public
you can schedule the public hearing
For
for the
following
moratorium,
meeting,
for the following meeting, which would be
The
2 weeks later.
So we go by the 28th.
Well, the public hearing will be the 28th. Whether they actually pass it on the 28th, I don't know.
Well, and if we have agreement from the planning board, we'd obviously want to hear the feedback, but we would, barring any significant changes, want to move that forward so that you folks have that as a tool to kind of move forward.
That's,
And certainly it would be in this board's hands by, we probably would have it in our hands before the 14th for our next meeting, if this board wants to react to that on a
Well-
recommendation level.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth. We'll make sure that, we don't just draft something together. We'll make sure that we're on the same page about the whole thing.
okay,
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
coming to
for
speak to
listening.
us.
appreciate it. I guess it begs the question then, where are we on the planning board, given the fact that we have a potential moratorium? And we have some public hearings tonight on these projects that I'm not sure we can move forward until we find out what the town board's gonna do. I just
I
throw
think
that,
it's my opinion that we sent out all the notices on the public hearing. The public is obviously here and they obviously want to have to say. We should go forward with the public hearings and hear from the public and then probably suspend activity until we know whether or not where we stand.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Which brings us to the next item on the agenda. This is item number 4, CVE North America. This is a continuance, purpose of which is for a public hearing, a 3-part public hearing relative to subdivision, site plan, and special use permit for a solar array on Duguid Road, tax map number 99-1-3. Good evening, sir.
Hi,
Hi.
good to see the board, good to see everybody tonight. Looks like I stepped into the lion's den. I have 2 people joining me, Laura Persky and Jared Lusk, if you could add that. Laura's with Tectonic, she's our civil engineer. And Jared Lusk is our attorney with Nixon Peabody.
Did you
There is.
did you want to present more to us today before we do the public hearing?
Yeah, I have some notes, I have an agenda on my phone. I think we wanted to cover the issues we spoke about last meeting, which were the subdivision issues mostly. And then connecting with NYSERDA. And then on the school district, I wanted to cover those 3 issues first. And then maybe we could open it up to the public hearing. And maybe I can give a little introduction about myself and CVE and where we've been with this project. My name is Carson Wynand. I'm a project developer for a company called CVE. We're headquartered in New York City. We develop community solar farms across the country. We built 32 megawatts in Massachusetts recently. All community solar projects. In the past couple of years, we've been working on these community solar projects in New York. So we have about 6 actively under development across the state. Adds up to about 40 megawatts total. And we've been working on this project since the middle of last year. We executed a purchase agreement with Tarky Lombardi. He's the owner, he's the landowner, an option to purchase the agreement once we receive permits. We've appeared in front of the board a couple of times. And, we're well into permitting at this point. It's 11.5 megawatts, so it's 2 1/4 projects. We plan to subdivide a 200-acre parcel into 4 smaller lots to fit these smaller community solar projects. There they are, Laura and Jared. It's the the local community, part of being a community solar project is the local residents and small businesses can participate in the facility and receive monthly discounts on their utility bill. So about 2,500 residents will receive 10% discounts on their utility bill. We also have worked through interconnection with National Grid. So you guys were talking about site selection a little bit earlier tonight, and she's entirely correct. There's really only very select pieces of land that work out for solar. So there's a lot of filters that go into this. There's the zoning, which parcels of land will accommodate solar per the existing zoning code. This parcel is zoned restricted agricultural. Given the existing zoning code, solar is a permitted use given a special use permit. So that's one filter. The other filter has to be of the right acreage. It has to be, these projects can be up to 5 megawatts each. So it has to be about at least 20 to 40 acres. The landowner has to be interested, obviously. Not every landowner wants to lease or sell their land. And then finally, the most important component is interconnection. So like she was saying, there's very limited 3-phase power lines. We have to be within at least a half a mile of those power lines, otherwise it becomes cost prohibitive. Those power lines can only accommodate up to about 10 megawatts, 11, 12 megawatts of additional capacity. So there has to be space for your new projects. And then those feeders, those power lines are called feeders, they feed into a substation. So we're feeding into the Dugowitz substation. It's about a mile north of our site. And that transformer bank has to have available capacity for your solar projects as well. So all of those, it really whittles down the playing field to where you can build these. And I would say with good confidence that there's not too many more. We've already permitted 5. There's myself and Source Renewables in the pipeline. There's not too many more places for these medium scale community solar projects to go in Manlius. I don't know why those other 5 projects haven't been constructed. I know once you get permits, there's still a lot of work to do. You have to coordinate with the utility on design and their timeline for construction. You have to arrange financing from a tax equity investor, from a long-term debt investor. And sometimes these developers even sell off the project. So there's a whole transaction to assign the asset to another party. So there's a lot of, once you get the permits, it's not shovel ready. Just trying to think what my train of thought there was. 11.5 megawatts. Yeah, so yeah, we are with, I guess, going back to our specific site. Okay, so then with pilot, yes, there's a new methodology coming from the state to determine a methodology on how to assess these projects for property taxes. And that's being determined and worked through right now at a state level. As we speak, we are allowed to negotiate pilots directly with the town, the county, and the school district, and that's what we intend to do. NYSERDA, New York State Energy and Research Authority, they have put all these, they are the agency at state level that have enacted all these solar policies, these solar programs about 5 years ago as a part of the state's goal to go 100% green. They want about 6 gigawatts of these community solar programs, and they've laid out all the rules and set all the incentives. So what is part of that to help assist in the development, they've also given guidelines and guidance for how to assess these solar projects from a property tax standpoint. So they have released a property tax guidebook. Their range is $1,700 to $5,100 per megawatt per year. And we're willing to, pay within that range, even a little bit above. We've had extensive conversations with the school district in the past couple of months as this project has been progressing. And we've had negotiations, I guess you could say, with Bill Furlong, Assistant Superintendent, Catherine Gavitt, School District's attorney, They've been referring back to Superintendent Dr. Craig Tice. And recently, we've made the proposition to make an upfront donation to just the school district. This is separate from the town and county, of $365,000, one-time payment. And not a bribe, still in combination with a small ongoing annual payment. And this is because they would like to see the funds up front. Other benefits from the project, as I said, 2,500 residents can participate. That's if 100% of the energy output goes to local residents. We have flexibility underneath this program to allocate up to 40% of the energy production to a single entity. So we've also discussed with the school district, them being that single entity and receiving 40% of the energy output, 40% of the credits, 40% of the savings. Given their energy consumption and their energy expenses, they save about $50,000 a year in energy expenses, about $1 million, a little over $1 million for the 25 years that this project will be in operation. CVE is a part of our corporate green initiative. A couple things that we do. We'd be happy to host an education day for any school students in the school district. Underneath the array will be pollinator-friendly vegetation, is what they call it. So grasses and flowers. It's a friendly, biodiverse environment on site. And we'll make a donation $1 per panel. So there's about 35,000 panels at this project site across our 11.5 megawatts. It's about 35,000 panels, and CVE will donate $35,000 to a local charity, environmental agency. So that was a lot of information. I wanted to get it out, have everybody hear all that. What we spoke about at the last meeting, more specifically, was the issue of taking this 200-acre parcel, which we think is very well suited for solar. We think the visual impacts are minimal. The distance between the array and any nearby homes is hundreds of feet to the on the west and the south and the north. There's existing vegetation that will be naturally in between the array and any homes nearby. And then on the eastern side is the fields for the school. So we're planning to take this 200-acre single parcel and subdivide it into 4 lots. 3 of them will be used for our community solar farms. 1 will remain with the existing landowner for a cell tower. The reason why we have to subdivide, and this was a big issue at the last couple of meetings, is because there's a 5 megawatt AC limitation on the NYSERDA regulations for this community solar program. So per single deed, per parcel, you can only have 5 megawatts AC. And we are subdividing to make more use of our 200 acres to fit more than 5 megawatts AC. 3 parcels, 5 megawatts, 5 megawatts, and then the third parcel is 1.5 megawatts. We've been through interconnection studies with National Grid, and we know this is feasible. This is the maximum amount of capacity that can fit on the Duguid Road 3-phase power lines and the Duguid substation. And, the previous meetings, we supplied documentation from National Grid that showed they do not entertain interconnection applications greater than 5 megawatts. And we submitted documentation from NYSERDA showing that they do not incentivize more than 5 megawatts per parcel. But we took it one step further this time, and we dug up orders from the Public Service Commission, one from 2014, proving that it is within their regulations and they allow it for us to subdivide a larger property into separately deeded parcels. And then even in 2021, a very large solar company named Borrego, they do a lot of lobbying and policy work within the industry. They petitioned that order from 2014, and they pushed it a little bit further. You don't even need separate deeds per se anymore. It can be just the requirement under the updated order is just a unique parcel ID, a unique section lot number. So we wanted to provide those orders and show that we're within our rights and within the intent of the program, all the way from the Public Service Commission down to NYSERDA and National Grid. Everybody is in agreement that's okay.
Mr. Lusk has provided us with a written letter, and he has cited the cases at the Public Service Commission, which indicates that this is in fact appropriate conduct. We were concerned about that.
Yes.
I am personally satisfied with the information provided now, that it's appropriate conduct.
It may be appropriate with NYSERDA. We have to make the determination whether it's appropriate with our.
That's exactly right.
I've got a couple questions I'm going to ask you to follow. You heard the discussion that we had before. It could be 2 months, 3 months before a moratorium may be in place. This may or may not be part of that moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, and it's delayed 6 months, 8 months, then you have to get site plan approval and so on. How does that impact your project?
Yeah, negatively, because the clock's always ticking on the incentives, the subsidies from the state. They only allocate so much capacity to receive those incentives. And they could expire. They could be filled by the time we receive our permits and qualify. So there was just a program where you needed to have permits in order to receive that subsidy from NYSERDA, and that program just expired a couple months ago. So that's a good example. We make it more difficult for us. We'd also have to take a look at our interconnection deadlines. We've received our interconnection study results back, and we're due to make payments at certain milestones. If we have to wait 6 to 12 months, it would put us in a prickly situation there.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier in your discussion tonight that you would develop some projects in Massachusetts.
Yes.
Do you still own them?
Yes.
Okay. So every project you've developed, you still own?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one thing that's unique about CVE, is that we own them and operate them for the long term. Like I was saying, a lot of developers, they're greenfield, pure play developers is what they're called. They receive permits and then they make efforts to sell them off to a long-term operator like CVE. And that's why, that might be one of the reasons why there's a delay in getting to construction with these other projects, but who knows?
That's kind of what I've been.
Yeah, but not CVE. We're an IPP, independent power producer, not just a developer.
Are you publicly traded?
Not. Headquarters is in Marseille, France. We have 440 megawatts worldwide that we own and built from scratch, or either acquired and now own long term. Yeah.
Madam Secretary, did we publish notice of public hearing?
That's the last thing.
Does the board want to hear it read?
I'll make a motion to waive the reading.
Motion to waive the reading, second by Fred. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Notice is hereby waived. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing. This is a continuation.
Continuation.
Well, but it's already open. So anyone on behalf of the public who would like to speak? Yes, sir. This is regarding Do Good Road. This is regarding the Do Good Road solar array.
Should I go to the podium?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Identify who you are and where you reside.
Well, after I say a few words like coffee, everybody grew up in Brooklyn. But I've lived in central New York since 1971. I moved to Fayetteville about 20 years ago. I live over in Camden Lane. My name is Peter Worth. I live in Fayetteville. I added solar to my home about 9 years ago. I was not able to make the last meeting. I was down, otherwise I would have presented comments then. In the last 2 weeks, I've read 2 letters that shared concerns about proposed solar farms. Both letters also said they supported the construction of solar. I think it would be helpful if we could step back for a second, take an objective look. Also, what was not mentioned in either letter is the most important, which I'll address at the end of my statement. First concern mentioned in these letters I read was the influence of large outside corporations, referred to as carpetbaggers in one of the statements. Any solar farm of significant size will, by its nature, require millions of dollars of capital and technological know-how. There are no corporations in Onondaga County that I know that meet these requirements. You can't build solar farms with bake sales. If we only build small scale solar farms of a few acres or less, we will never be able to meet the goals for renewable energy mandated in the Climate Leadership and Protection Act passed by New York State in 2020. The second issue, which I think is a great concern to many people, is agricultural land. Solar farms are great for agricultural land. They act as a land bank, ensuring there will be no development. 30 years from now, take off the solar panels. You have farm fields. Solar farms are also a great site, and other communities have done this for raising agriculture. Goats, you can graze goats underneath the solar panels, and this has been done in other communities. Another option is planting pollinated species, which increase agricultural production in the surrounding countryside. And finally, and perhaps most important, they enable farmers who have land that is less productive to be used as a source of income, enabling small family farms to hold on to their farms that they might otherwise have to sell for commercial development. Solar farms, in my opinion, are a great resource for farmers and individuals who want to ensure agricultural land for future generations. The third concern raised was concern for the pastoral review. People don't want to see it. People are entitled to their personal view. You take two people, you look at a painting, one person loves it, the other person hates it. There is also the concept of common good and community. My grandmother had a small family farm of about 60 acres in Greene County in the Catskills, where all my relatives went for vacations. They basically spent all my summers there as a kid growing up in Brooklyn. I have very fond memories of Grandma's farm. In the late 60s, early 70s, not sure exactly when, New York State built a road, state highway, to the back of my grandmother's property. We weren't happy. It was about a quarter mile back from the house, actually where they put it through the farm. It was a berm. I think they raised it 20 feet. It was like the Berlin Wall. We could see it from the back of Grandma's farmhouse. For the common good, we learned to live with it. New York State residents got a highway, which maybe some of you folks drove. What was missing from these letters which I read and rarely mentioned is concern for the next generation. Climate change is simple physics. Increase the CO2 concentration, the planet warms, and you have more extreme weather events. Doesn't make any difference if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you voted for President Trump or President Biden, or didn't vote at all. You can love solar, you can hate it. Physics doesn't care. As I read this in Oregon is experiencing an unprecedented heat wave. Seattle, Portland, and Olympia all hit record new high temperatures, with Portland registering 112 degrees. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 30 degrees higher than normal. The city of Portland opened 11 emergency cooling shelters where residents without air conditioning could escape sweltering heat in response, escape the sweltering heat. The county health officer, Jennifer Vine, stated, "This is a life-threatening event." This is getting played out as we have this meeting. Lake Mead, formed by the Hoover Dam, is 140 feet lower than normal. It is at its lowest level since it was built in the 1930s. It is very likely the government will declare a federal water emergency this coming August. We need to plan carefully and to take individual concerns voiced by people into account when possible. We might be able to screen some of a solar farm, but maybe not all of it. We need to generate appropriate revenue. All valid concerns. At the same time, we need to act quickly. The majority of the scientific community is stating that action this decade is critical if we are to avoid catastrophic climate change. And I think what we're seeing is that the catastrophic climate change is already here. Portland will get hotter and the West will experience greater forest fires. I have confidence that the people in central New York care about our neighbors and are concerned about the next generation. I have confidence we will do the right thing in building out large-scale renewable energy in a timely and responsible fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any other speakers? Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't go up there, I'm disabled. Borrowed chair from. Okay. My name is Joanna Marciano. I live on Salt Springs Road. And I'm very concerned about what's happening in our location. I come from a medical family, and I'm also a former architect. And I think we humans have a tendency to go along with everything that's put in front of us. We're letting technology corporations run our lives. From a medical point of view, I have been doing a lot of reading, scientific reading regarding 5G. And the government has pushed that through on us without any scientific proof. And the scientists have proved to us that in the long term, we have problems with cancer. The same thing with the solar system that we are now talking about. We need to do our homework. We need to read about science and education on our health. And these solar farms like this is going to cause a lot of medical problems on the long term. And I agree with that gentleman over there. We need to think of the next generation. And that is, I wanted to speak up to that. We also have problems with our water. There's nothing wrong with our water. Wrong that aquifer is pure and everything else. Ask people, please think this out. Think this out because we're talking about medical. Do we value our lives? Do we want to pass on cancer? These 5G cell phones are causing a lot of brain cancer. The scientists have proven that. We don't listen to the problem. We don't listen to scientists. We should listen to it and make a very intelligent decision here. But we need to have both sides, not just the corporations and the companies that want to put in the solar farms. Please listen. I have the background, and I'm glad to be here today. We are on to and express my concerns for everybody's health. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, Steve Benson, I live up on Salt Springs.
Would you please go to the podium?
Yeah.
It's Mr. Benson.
Stephen Benson. Yeah, I live up on Salt Springs. I have a basic question, and that is that the CVE is a four-node company. Will it, just this week, the Department of Justice is starting to crack down on solar panels coming from China. can you guarantee your supply chain will not bring in Uyghur solar panels? And will you guarantee that you can hold the cost if a large portion of the solar panel local market supply is cut out of the US? Will the French company find a way to bring them in? You need to speak to that.
Yeah, we're happy to issue a statement saying that we will not use weaker solar panels. The other, to follow up on the rest of his statement there, our panels do come from China. Well, we run a thorough procurement process when we are ready for construction. And there's a myriad of panel producers. A lot of them are from China. So we are at this point manufacturer agnostic. There's great panel manufacturers in Korea, for example, as well. So once we get to construction, whatever requirements you would like to see, we will take into consideration. I think a very easy one we can say now is that we will not buy panels from enslaved populations. A couple other points, just to follow up on some of the other statements that were made that I thought of. No?
Yeah.
Why don't we wait until the end?
Okay.
And then we're gonna give you an opportunity to address issues,
Okay.
possibly tonight, but if not, at the next meeting.
My name is Julie Fenster. I live up East Seneca Turnpike. I'd like to thank Mrs. Marciano for her comments. Mr. Worth, with all due respect, you're not a farmer. I am, so I'd rather you don't speak for farmers. Mr. Lusk, it's not pronounced do good, it's do good.
Do good.
And that might be something to keep in mind what we're trying to do here tonight. I look at one example of why farmers in particular are worried about this. I'm a horse farmer and I have an orchard. Why did I move to Manlius? For clean water, the cleanest. Clean air, the cleanest. Clean land. I need that. I need that for my horses. I think maybe your families need clean air, clean water, and clean land. I have here a U.S. Geological Survey study, fairly objective, that points out that the rain runoff from solar arrays contains a great many heavy metals, but two in particular in excess of what is allowable, okay? What is allowable for humans, let alone my horses. That's cadmium and lead. Okay, this solar array up on Do-Good, especially as it's so large and especially as it's so high up, is going to run into the Manlius water table. If someone can deny that, I don't know how they can, because we all know that Manlius doesn't have the best drainage. The water goes where it wants to. And I would not want my horses to be subject to the poisons that come off of these water, of these solar panels. In addition, the chemicals with which they need to clean solar panels are nothing, short of toxic. But let's just talk about what the government says. Lead and cadmium, that's in the future of the Manlius water table. Okay, so let's remember it's called do good, not do pollute.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
There's a man right behind you.
My name is Jim Gerace, and I live at 8628 Salt Springs Road. This solar panel is going to be in my backyard. I did some research. Came from a Orcs Energy. They say they're a well-renowned manufacturer, distributor, and trader of solar panels, solar pump controller, a service provider of solar panel maintenance service. They offer products that are manufactured with the very highest of quality with raw materials, advanced technology. We offer the best. Now, though it's a foreign company, their United States headquarters is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Everything that I'm about to read is verbatim on their website. The production and operation of a solar energy collector panel is neither wholly safe nor ecological. In addition to the fact that they depend on environmental conditions that they represent potential health risks due to the toxic chemical products and byproducts associated with their operation. These systems are also prone to electrical failures and to generate fires that could result in loss of property, injuries, or even death. Fire is a potential risk when it comes to solar panels and solar collection systems, mainly because they are very different scenarios in which they are placed could contribute to the generation of a fire. A loose or poorly connected wiring, a poor ground connection, or the use of spare parts that do not match the specific unit could cause a fire. Also, spontaneous combustion may occur either from the parts within the collector or in the surrounding environment. Due to the high levels of heat produced by the device, smoke and toxic byproducts are also produced depending on the areas affected by the fire. As with many modern electronic appliances, solar collector panels have components and systems that can fail. This includes switches, fuses, wiring. If any of these parts fail, it needs to be replaced quickly with new elements that match the panel's standards and requirements. Failure to comply with this technical rule may result in damage, including electrical shock and fire. Toxicity. Although much is said that solar energy is completely safe from the environment, the truth is that each solar panel is made of chemical materials such as arsenic and cadmium. In the process, it generates many toxic byproducts, such as, and I can't produce some of these things, hexafluoride, sulfur, silicon, tetrasorolide, chloride. These products are not only dangerous for the environment, but also for humans, domestic and wild animals. Among the compounds found in solar panels is cadmium and lead, extremely toxic metals. There are a number of other toxic and hazardous materials used in the production of solar panels, including gallium, arsenide, copper, iridium, gallium, dicyanide, chloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, hydrogen fluoride, tetrafluorophane, and acetone. I don't know if those things are being pronounced correctly or not. You talked about the assessment earlier, that these might have a lower assessment. What about the property owners? Are you going to reduce our assessment when these things are running across our backyard? I live below this level. And all I can imagine is these toxic chemicals coming down, getting into our aquifers, and all of our wells being totally polluted. It just doesn't make sense. One of the things that puzzles me is Syracuse is not noted for a lot of sunshine. These things probably aren't going to work too good in the winter. We don't get enough sunshine to do to that much. I don't know if these things generate noise, generate heat. I understand they're going to be drilling some deep holes. They have to kill all the vegetation. That's the same stuff that we can't put in our lawns because it'll go into our wells. So all of this stuff is going to come down and we are going to be affected. It just doesn't make sense. I wonder if this is a reduction to my energy bill or a windfall to investors. Also, it says our resale values will be reduced by a minimum of about 7%. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Brandon Jacobson, 5912 North Furnish Street. It's an active developer and home builder. Obviously, we're all, technology is moving at a fast pace right now. And I think there's obviously some concerns in the environment that we're all trying to solve for. But I can say personally, from a material supplier, we see different products right now that are moving. Where currently I was proposed by a roofing shingle company, but they're making a shingle now that produces power. And I think we're making these decisions as a community as a whole, when really is the rate that we're moving at. Some of these, call it issues or things that we're trying to solve for, might be able to be solved internally on our own properties. We make our own decisions. You've got a community here that's being affected because of, if you're kidding yourself, if you don't think this is anything too different than a normal commercial developer would do. Yes, there might be a need. Yes, there might be a want, but there's a financial gain. They're not doing it because they think it's the right thing to do. I would also like to say, which is an interesting fact that I was looking up, is that a megawatt generally can power by itself about 600 homes. So you're telling me there's 6,600 homes if they have an 11-watt system up on Do Good, but yet they're proposing a 10% reduction in the national grid bills. So I'm not, mathematician, but that doesn't really jive as far as what is our real benefit here. And again, it goes back to, this isn't about the better of the community or being green. This is a corporate way for people to make a financial gain. And I just revert back to my first statement, is that we're making these decisions at a rapid pace as technology moves at a rapid pace. And I think if we all looked as a community and said there's different ways to get to the finish line, I think we all could probably benefit from this. Hopefully the moratorium comes to place, and really the ones that are already approved should be looked at a little more carefully, because they're scientific facts that none of us have really put into place. So that's
Sir?
I am Joe Masinio. One of the things that people sometimes overlook with the solar, I'll call it a panacea, is that for every megawatt that's produced by the sun, when the sun is not available, it has to be produced out from traditional power sources, which is typically fossil fuels or nuclear. So as ratepayers, when Niagara or National Grid is forced to buy power from them during the day, they have to scale down some of the capital equipment that they paid billions of dollars for. So the power companies obliged to always provide power. So at night or on cloudy days, they have to stand by ready with all the megawatts instantly to come online, because you can't skip a beat with power. So yes, it's nice that we're generating from the sun, but that all has to be backed up by traditional power. And I own a home which is strictly powered by the sun, so I know what happens in November, December, January. Not much. It's very, very minimal power. So that power company has to have all this equipment available to produce that power.
Anyone else? Sir?
I am Frank Tice, Superintendent of the Fayetteville Manlius Central School District, and I just wanted 3 points of clarification. I know in the media it's been reported that the school district is in favor. I know there's many people in favor, not in favor, but the school district does not get a seat at the table until it passes muster with the planning board and the town going forward. They've done their due diligence in terms of reaching out to our legal counsel, and Mr. Furlong was mentioned in there, my assistant superintendent for business. And the conversations have centered around, my understanding, 3 things: a letter of support, which the school district denied because we do not get a seat at the table until after the other conversations have occurred. Number 2 was disclosure of what prior solar farm did in terms of a donation for the school district for STEM. That's a matter of public record that was released to CBE. And then finally, the 3rd piece is the use of power by the school district. I know that conversation has happened with legal counsel, but it has not got to my level. As by matter of policy, the superintendent and the board president are the spokespersons for the district. So I don't know how this is getting released to the media, that the district is either in support or against, but it has not come from my office in particular. So these conversations, they're doing their due diligence, homework behind the scenes, but the school district does not get a seat at the table until after these deliberations have taken place.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. Is there anyone else? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nancy Gaskill. I live on McDermott Road in Manlius.
Nancy,
Gaskill.
thank you.
I just wanted to make one point clear about the toxins from the solar arrays. That it is not a local effect. It's not only going to affect the people on Salt Springs Road or Do Good Road. There are streams that go along all of these fields that they want to put these solar arrays on. They drain into the Manlius aquifer. They drain into Lake Creek, Ledger Dike, Limestone Creek, the Swan Pond, the Lower Swan Pond, Perry Springs, Beard Park. It's not going to just affect the people who are living on Salt Springs Road or Do Good Road. It affects the entire Manlius community and the quality of their water.
Ellison, do we have anybody?
Yes, looks like we do. We just had a Q&A about the audio quality, but unfortunately we have to have the AC on. So this would be the time if anyone is attending by Zoom, if they wanted to raise their hand. We'll just give them a minute to do this, and I think this might help you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't see any hands raised virtually, but I do see an in-person hand.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, if you'd be kind enough to come forward.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong solar program.
Okay. Is there anyone else? I would entertain a motion. I would entertain a motion to continue and keep this hearing open.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Motion by Richard, second by Michael Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is not ended. The public hearing is going to remain open until further notice.
I've got one question if I could. And Doug, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I did a quick calculation. One of the things that when you pull, if this gets approved.
Yes.
And you go to pull a building permit, one of the things is the decommission and putting security in.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've learned is that there isn't a bonding company in the world that's going to give a 25-year bond. So the bottom line is the security would be a cash deposit.
Yep.
And my quick calculation, but based on NYSERDA's numbers,
Yeah.
whether they're right or not, and what happens 25 years from now, who knows? But it would come to roughly $500,000. Is your company prepared to post a $500,000 deposit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and all of our projects in Massachusetts were cash deposits for decommissioning.
Because bonds aren't available.
Yeah, bonds are difficult to get.
Impossible.
Yeah, so that's what we factored in for this project. We usually get an independent engineer to draft up an estimate to remove the system and use that as the basis for the decommissioning.
All right. Thank you.
I've got a question for you for cash deposits. I'll ask you privately sometime, but how do you take into account the rate of inflation that may happen in the next 25 years?
I mean, that's a difficult thing, Fred, to be honest. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 25 years? NYSERDA used 2.5% per year, which in today's day and age is reasonable, who knows what's gonna happen, going forward. Back in the 70s, it was 15% or something. So, pardon?
Does it compound?
I believe they did, yeah. But it's a question, and one of the big concerns I have is right now, Doug, where's the closest place to recycle these? Is it Weedsport? It's out that way somewhere, Auburn,
Yeah,
Weedsport.
I'm not sure, yeah, but it's somewhere out there.
Yeah, it's the only facility in central New York where you can take these panels to recycle. Well, 25 years from now, what if it's in Pittsburgh or who knows where? I mean, the trucking costs could be off the charts. So those are the kind of things that's difficult to project. So, just like I said, just using NYSERDA's numbers, using the KWs that they're going to produce or megawatts that they're going to produce, that's the number. It's roughly $500,000.
We'll have 6 months to look at that.
We'll have plenty of time, yeah.
Carson, I did promise you that we would give you an opportunity to respond. But to be very candid with you right now, in lieu of the possibility that there's going to be a moratorium in the very near future, and the fact that we also have a second public hearing immediately following, I'm going to reserve your right to respond to a later date.
Sure.
And we'll keep that open. We will definitely give you an opportunity to respond.
Carson,
Thank you, everybody.
before you go,
Thank you.
Carson, before you go, you asked Jared to remind him to send the contracts that he said.
Yeah.
he sent.
Yes, so we have the contracts with National Grid. We have the contract with the landowner.
Okay.
There's no contract with NYSERDA until we submit our application and are approved for the program. But we can provide that. Yes, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. We will be moving on to the next item on the agenda, and this is the application by Andrew Day and Labella Associates. It's scheduled for a public hearing relative to site plan and special permit. This is Salt Springs Road Solar Array, 8540 Salt Springs Road, tax map number 100-1-11.1. Someone here to speak on behalf of the developer. It's all virtual.
Yeah.
Good evening. We also have Corey Auerbach with Barclay Damon, our land use attorney, joining us as well.
Okay. This is scheduled for public hearing this evening. And we always open it with the opportunity for the developer to say something if they want to what we've already heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Corey Auerbach from the law firm of Barclay Damon. Hopefully my audio is coming through loud and clear for you. So we appreciate the opportunity to present the project at this public hearing. We are prepared to take you through the project. I know that at least 2 prior meetings, we've already walked the board through some of the finer details, but because this is a public hearing, we thought it would be beneficial to give a broad overview of the project. I did observe the last public hearing and anticipate that we will hear many similar concerns from the community at the public hearing this evening. Also heard the comments from the town board representatives about the potential for holding a moratorium on these projects. I would note for the record that we have received a recommendation from the county pursuant to 239M. The requisite lead agency solicitation has gone out, which would put this board in a position to make a determination of significance. The public hearing is scheduled for this evening, all of which would constitute prerequisites for this board acting on the site plan and the special use permit applications that are complete and that are before the board this evening. One thing that I want to get out ahead of is what I'll refer to as catastrophizing or positioning a solar development in a worst case scenario. You've heard things about poison and pollutants and toxins and impacts to resale value, and would propose to this board that all of that is unfounded, that there is no empirical evidence before the board on this or any other project that a solar development creates the impacts that you've heard about. There is no scientific or other evidence to suggest that solar panels cause toxic chemicals to leach into waterways. In fact, the opposite is true. These are inert facilities. They do not cause noise or vibration or smoke or emissions. They do not increase traffic. They do not require additional services on the community. They do not impact schools or fire or police services. This is a renewable energy resource that helps to promote the state's objective by 2030 to have 70% of energy in New York State come from renewable sources. Solar energy cannot be sited anywhere, as was noted by one of the town board members earlier this evening. You can only locate in areas where you have access to an interconnection point, where you have geography that is suitable, that is free from obstructions, and that is located where it can harness the energy from the sun. And of course, you also need to find a seller or a landlord who is willing to host one of these facilities. So there are competing objectives. There is the objective to reach the state's renewable energy resources. And of course, we're also mindful that we locate these facilities in places where they will be harmonious with the surrounding area. Here we have a location where a solar facility is expressly permitted in the zoning district, subject to the issuance of a special use permit. I would note that where a land use is permitted by special use permit, that is tantamount to a legislative finding that it will be in harmony with the surrounding area. But that being said, I also appreciate that there are adjoining uses that must be in harmony with what we're proposing. And so the way that we do that is solar facilities are not invisible, right? We can't completely hide them from view, but what we can do is we can offer buffering and screening that mitigates against the visual impacts from adjoining owners. We can locate them sufficiently distant from adjoining uses and buffer them with vegetative screening. And that's precisely what we're proposing with this project. In fact, at the last meeting, we showed some visual simulations demonstrating how this project will be buffered from adjoining uses. And we invited the board to provide us with additional locations from which we would be willing to provide you with visual simulations so that you could see what the visual impacts will be. Of course, it will be modeling. We can't put trees that are going to be 10 years old out on the site right now for you to see, but we can use computer modeling to show you what the 1 year, the 5 year, and the 10-year views will be from adjoining uses. And we appreciated the planning board on Thursday last week providing us with those locations from which you would like to see those visual simulations. They do take time. We do not have them available this evening to show you because we did just receive them on Thursday, but we are committed to providing those to you so that you don't have to guess what the visual impacts will be. Similarly, it was requested at the last meeting that we provide copies of agreements. There was some additional outreach to me. We did facilitate obtaining all of the documentation that was requested, specifically copies of the lease with the landowner, agreements for the interconnection, sample agreements with NYSERDA for what we will expect if this project is approved, as well as additional information and documentation that we think will help this board make a reasoned decision on the special use permit and the site plan. So with that, I think it would be beneficial and to have Drazen Gasic from Labella just give a very brief overview of what we're proposing with this project before you open it up to the public, if that is okay with the board.
Corey, could I ask, ask for a clarification, but also make a statement? Are you still there?
I'm here.
One of the things that you said earlier was the zoning is proper for this use with a special use permit, as if nothing else is required. I just want to make a clarification. There are several things in our code that are required for you as the applicant to do beyond just the special use permit. So it isn't just the special use permit, it's done other things, as you said, with the trees and so on that need to be done that this board needs to consider. So I just wanted to make that clear. The other thing, when you first started out, you had mentioned that you understand that there's a consideration right now of doing a moratorium. And then you got into, you are providing everything that we need so that we can move forward with the site plan approval and the special use permit approval. Are you saying that you anticipate that being done prior to any decision on a moratorium? Or are you saying that you understand there's a moratorium and it may be 6 months before that gets done? I want to get a clarification.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. So to your first point, I did not mean to suggest that the issuance of a special use permit was the only thing that was necessary. And if I misstated that, then I apologize. My point was that where solar development such as we're proposing is an authorized use subject to the issuance of a special use permit, the courts in the state of New York have determined that that is the equivalent of a legislative finding that the proposed use is in harmony with the character of the area. So I understand that we need a determination of significance pursuant to SECRA. We need a special use permit. We need a site plan approval. We need a building permit. All of those things will be necessary before we can bring forward our solar development. But my point was more discrete, just to state that where a special use permit use is allowed, there has already been a decision by the town board that they believe that the use is in harmony with surrounding uses, subject to compliance with special use permit and other standards. So that was the point I was trying to make. And then as to why I stated that you have completed the 239M referral, that we have a recommendation from the county, that you've completed the secret lead agency solicitation, that we have a complete application for site plan and special use permit before the board, is simply to make the point that if the board wanted to move forward with making a determination on the underlying approvals that are required from the planning board, there's no legal impediment from you moving forward. Of course, it's your prerogative when and whether you move forward, when and whether you close a public hearing. It was just to put into the record that there would be no legal prohibition from you moving forward with these approvals before a moratorium were put in place if the town board exercises its prerogative to do so.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Okay. Someone was going to now speak to us about the overall project.
Yes, that's me. My name is Drazen Gasek. I'm with Labella Associates. I'm a project manager at Labella Associates. I'm just going to briefly cover just the site layout and the project as itself as it currently stands before you. So Sourcewell Noble LLC has developed plans and has submitted them before the town for 5 megawatt solar array, whereas the previous one was a larger application before you. This is just a 5 megawatt AC solar array without battery storage on lands, which were formerly owned by Everland Holdings Company LLC, but will be continued owned by Sourcewell Nobles and Andrew Day moving forward with the project. Located at 8540 Salt Springs Road on the south side of Salt Springs Road, just east of McClaughlin Road in the town of Manlius. The subject property is an 85.99 acre parcel. It's zoned restricted agricultural and is currently farmed for hay. The layout conforms to the underlying required setback for the restricted agricultural district, which represents a 40-foot front setback, a 20-foot side setback, and a 40-foot rear setback, which is represented in the drawings. The proposed project footprint is 33 acres with a physical disturbance or permanent ground disturbance of less than an acre once it's complete. The remainder of the site would be continuously farmed moving forward as well. The proposed community solar system for the property includes the installation of approximately 13,500 modules utilizing a single axis tracker system. They would be standing approximately 9 foot in height when horizontal to 14 feet approximately when they are on a 60-degree angle restraint. So they're not gonna, the intention isn't that they are able to go perfectly vertical, but that they're constrained at a 60-degree angle based on the footprint of the solar modules. The panels themselves will be spaced at 16-foot intervals with an anticipated screw pile driven pile system for foundation as determined by geotechnical report. On site, we would have 2 equipment pads with inverters as well as located on the plants. A 8-foot tall chain link fence will surround the array. That would be 7-foot chain link fence with a foot of barbed wire as required by the town code. For visual screening, a landscape buffer will be planted along the Salt Springs road frontage, as well as in addition to behind the Salt Springs road neighbors that are just to the east of the property for additional screening, while we're still utilizing the existing vegetation of theirs as well. We're also proposing additional vegetative screening to the west of the property to mitigate any visual impacts as well. The road that's been proposed on site is 20-foot wide. It would be a pervious road section, as in to reduce any stormwater concerns from introducing an impervious road layer. We're looking to utilize pollinator seed mix on site within the fence and regular seed mix externally where it's not going to be farmed. So if there's a buffer area in between the farmland and anything that's up to the fence, we would be utilizing regular seed mix. The layout is currently based on wetland avoidance and steep slope grading avoidance to preserve existing conditions. Again, the intention is to really reduce the amount of any kind of impact to the existing site so it can be in the future, if desired, be returned back to farming. And then the only clearing that's really proposed on this is the brush and shrub clearing within the footprint. With regards to where we are with agency reviews, we have performed wetland delineations in May of 2020. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services for threatened and endangered species was completed in June of 2020 with none cited on site within this facility area. Wetland jurisdictional determination was completed of August 2020, which means that the Army Corps and DEC have agreed with the wetland delineations that were performed. And we have also coordinated our intended design with them, to which they've agreed that we are not having an impact. Coordination with New York State Historic Preservation Office with no impact was received in April of 2021. SIP report updated was submitted to the planning board in 2021 of April. Visualization report submitted as well as part of that package in April 2021, but we are providing additional visualizations for the requested areas that was received on June 24th. The Ag NOI, since this is agricultural area footprint, would be submitted. Was submitted on May of 2021, and then a glint and glare was submitted with no glare impact for the planning board to review. Along with, we do have a decommissioning report and an estimate in place for this project as well. So that's essentially where we are with the project from at least a layout and an agency review currently.
Okay. Richard, got a question. In the winter, these panels will be facing the south for 3 months or thereabouts. How high will they be when they're facing the south?
So these panels are actually a tracker system, which the intention is that they are going from east to west, not facing south. So they'll have a orientation of north to south with the alignment.
And my question is, since this slopes to the north, in the winter months, those things have to be pretty high to catch the sun in the south. What's the maximum height in the winter months? You had mentioned 16 feet in the presentation, but I got to believe it's something more than that.
So it's going to be 14 feet at the maximum, but again, it's not going to be tilting towards the south. It's just going to be following the horizon east to west, with the limitation being that 60-degree angle, which equates to a 14-foot panel height at its maximum. So it's not going to sit vertically. It's just going to always be on a tilt because of the constraint of the 60-degree angle.
So I guess you've answered the question, 16 feet. Because it's
14 feet.
Total panel is 14 feet, but I'm assuming the connector is in the middle of the panel.
The height.
7 feet.
No. I'm representing what it is at the tallest peak of the array, once it is at that angle, is 14. The panel, as it's turning around its vertices, will be 9 feet.
Tell me it'll never face the south.
It is intention that it does not tilt towards the south. It is intended to be following east to west. I can share just the site plan, which I'm hoping is before you as well. But as I mentioned,
I'm not an engineer, but if it doesn't face the south in the wintertime, you're going to get no sun.
so the orientation of the array for a tracker system is north to south as in linearly this way, and the panels will rotate east to west. Whereas for a fixed tilt system, it is permanently secured to a southern hemisphere at roughly 20 to 22 degrees, and it's always going to be facing the south. The intention of this system is that it's tracking the sun along across the hemisphere.
So there's no north-south tilt to this, just east-west.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do significant engineering studies to make sure the decision between a single axis tracker or a fixed tilt array facing south. And in this case, we find single axis trackers help produce more energy per panel, and it's the best design choice. So we've looked at it significantly.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Secretary, have we published a notice of public hearing?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to waive the reading. Second.
Motion to waive the reading, Richard, second by Fred, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The reading is hereby waived. I would entertain a motion to open this public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Fred, second by Arnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is hereby open. Anyone care to speak relative to this particular project? Could you tell us who you are and where you live?
My name is Marilyn Resnick, and I live on Salt Springs Road. Now, my asthma kicked in a little bit today, so I may sound a little bit breathless, but I want to read an email that I sent to the Manlius. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, now I see a proposal to put in an industrial solar complex on Salt Springs Road. As president of Donegan's Bluff Homeowners Association, I say absolutely not. We strongly oppose the issuance of a special use permit. This land is zoned as residential agricultural, and it should stay that way. I don't know why all of a sudden Salt Springs Road in Manlius is being targeted with unwanted projects, but enough is enough. First, you're trying to push through this water district that we neither want nor need, and now this solar panel farm. Take the projects elsewhere to areas where they would be more appropriate and appreciated. When we bought our home on Salt Springs Road in the 1980s, it was because it was quiet, very little traffic, no lights, and abundant wildlife. One whole wall in my home is full of pictures of animals and birds that we saw just looking out our window. We don't want that to change. It's believed that from the air, the glare from these panels resembles a lake. So when birds swoop down, they frequently collide with deadly results. Why would we want anything like this in our neighborhoods? Why would you? This industrial solar complex would eliminate the habitat that wildlife has been enjoying for decades, and we do not want that to happen. The fence surrounding this complex makes it look like a prison. Outrageous. Our existing homes close to the security fence. In addition, the project is a huge eyesore. Is that what you want to see when you're sitting in your backyard? The company pushing for this is from Greenwich, Connecticut, and this project isn't allowed there. Why would they think we want to heal? I'm getting too old for this, and I just want to continue living in my quiet, peaceful home and enjoy all the critters and birds that have become like family to me. And this is a picture of it, and it's pretty hideous. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Resnick. Anyone else? James, if you're going to speak, you're going to have to take the hand off. Who's next?
They say that there's no toxic runoff. Every company that you get in on the web, which web isn't always correct, talks about toxic runoffs and all the chemicals involved. I can't quite accept this particular outfit here saying there is no toxic runoff. The only other thing I had to say was, I lived in a flight pattern. Big aircraft are going over, and I read also an article that the glare from these can affect what the pilot sees when he's coming in. There was something that they said they had a glare report. I'll give you this. This is from a company that produces these things. Everything that they say is a problem.
But he's a lawyer. He said there isn't it. Thank you, sir. Folks, we're going to continue to call witnesses, but we've heard not only from Mr. Gervais, but we've also heard from Mrs. Fenster before about the toxics. We're taking note of this and we're listening to everything. So I hope we're not going to be hearing repetition to some degree. I'm not trying to limit you, but I guess in a way I kind of am to an extent. Yes.
My name is Emily Zipprich, but I'm actually reading this on behalf of Elaine Francis. So, Mr. Theobald, it has come to my attention that there is a proposal for a solar panel farm on Salt Springs Road. How can the board consider this to be all right for those of us that live on the road? First, you want to force us into a water project on our street, which most of us do not want, nor do we need. Now you want to destroy the beautiful land that surrounds us into a huge eyesore, not to mention detrimental to the wonderful wildlife in our area and to some extent, the people that live on our road. Why would you and the rest of the board think for 1 second we would be in favor of such a project? Obviously, you and the other board members do not live on Salt Springs Road. If any of you did, this project wouldn't make it past the initial reading of this proposal. Those of us who live on Salt Springs Road do so because of the beauty of the land, the wonderful wildlife around us, and the peace and quiet. You are proposing to ruin the very things we treasure living here. Studies have shown solar arrays should be placed in semi-industrial sites where good farmland will not be sacrificed. Please read that highlighted sentence over and over again, where good farmland will not be sacrificed. So my answer to you and to the board members for the solar farm is no, no, no. Elaine Francis.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I see a hand up in the back.
I'll go first. George Lorifus. Just one note, I heard about the chemicals and runoff and all that. Your cell phone contains harmful toxins, including lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, chlorine, and bromine that can leak into groundwater and bioaccumulate in the food chain. This is just a quick search on the internet. So I think any electronic component, but I'm not saying solar panels do that. I haven't researched it. I have not seen that before, that solar panels, leach out. But your cell phones have all that same stuff in it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Joe Massinio, and I live on South Springs Road, about 2/10 of a mile from the proposed site. I'd like to make a general statement, and then there's a couple of specific items I'd like to bring up that were in the actual application. I oppose the project for a number of reasons. Some of my neighbors, especially the ones at Donnegan's Bluff that are very, very close to the panels, have already expressed. It's very simple. 13,500 bright and shiny solar panels do not belong on this beautiful hillside, which is currently growing hay that feeds many cattle and horses. You can plant all the trees you want that are 6 feet tall. And if you've ever tried to plant a tree on South Springs Road, after you get down to 6 inches, it's as hard as this floor. So those trees, maybe 6 or 8 footers, will have to be watered every week or they'll die. Now, you say a 14-foot panel at its peak, but your report says it can get as high as 20, so which is it? So now you're gonna put a 14 or 20 foot or whatever it happens to be panel on an elevation that's 60 feet above the road. You need to have a forest of sequoia trees to cover them. The people that live across the street, Vince Harris, the Garofalos, the Bushnells, they're gonna look out at that field forever. And you've just destroyed their view shed and probably their property values. The technical and environmental revenue issues that surround this type of project are far too complex. And I applaud the board, town board, and the zoning board for asking for a moratorium. Planning board is just, in no offense, accustomed to reviewing retail, residential, commercial properties of a very traditional nature. It's a case where technology is getting ahead of what we have in the way of law. Somebody had already mentioned that. There's just too many unanswered questions. You do need outside help to consider all the different things. We've read in our paper about what happened in Clay, where they didn't get the pilot agreement quite right. They kind of cheated themselves out of money. So taking a breath and studying it is encouraged. I work for a company that finances these type of projects, and the amount of due diligence that we go through is extensive. And I suggest that you need to fully study this, and it could take more than 6 months. This solar generation facility with a useful life of 20 to 25 years, a lot can happen. You just think back 20 years ago where we were with technology. We need to develop a strict and exhaustive protocol that guides the approval process for all these systems. The town should first complete the comprehensive plan, which it sounds like you're headed toward. And then after that, and that plan basically says what we as the residents, not somebody from out of town, think is the best and highest use for this land. That land is beautiful. I'm not sure these folks, other than with drone footage, have ever been to that land to sit and look at the serenity of that hillside. So once that happens, and the comprehensive plan is completed, we need very specific guidelines. We need to see all the contracts, not redacted contract as was suggested in the last meeting. We need to see all the contracts. We need to see all the details. We need to know who the off-taker is. We need to know what they've agreed to accept as a rate. We need to know how this is going to be decommissioned. I would suggest that the $500,000 bond that you're looking for is probably too little. Just inflation over 25 years at 2% is going to make that number very, very small. I think if we rush the process, we run the risk of leaving our kids and our grandchildren another Onondaga Lake disaster, which again, most of the people up here, other than maybe the local attorney, wouldn't even know what I was talking about. So if it's okay, I'd like to address a couple specific issues. Is that okay? Okay. I'm reading right from the FIF. First of all, they describe this as a 33-acre former agricultural field of standing corn. I lived there 11 years. I don't ever remember there being corn there in 11 years. It's not a former agricultural field. Mr. Morocco can tell you, and Mr. Meineken, that it's currently a hay field and feeds over 600 cattle and many horses. Okay, so that's item number one. The application is incorrect in that point. Here's another one. The report says that they will, in one place they talk about using a helical earth screw. In another place they talk about a driven post. And once again, for those of us who actually built homes there, live there, tried to plant
a small plant or a big tree, or in my case, excavate a basement, which took 5 weeks, you'll know that neither of those techniques are going to use. So what does that leave them? Most likely, they'll have to drill using a standard drill casing, which means there'll be 481 penetrations in our aquifer, which will allow water, surface water, to pass along the casing into the aquifer instead of being filtered by the good earth, which there is a layer of topsoil there, albeit thin. Another question they answered: is this project site located over or immediately adjoining a primary, principal, or sole aquifer? They answered no. Now, obviously, you all know me because I've dealt with the water district issue. That is our sole source of water. That is not just our primary, that is our only source of water. So to answer no, I would send this back to them and tell them complete it correctly for number one and start over. This is our aquifer, that's what we drink. There's many wells that Mr. Morocco has on the site. Nearby neighbors have wells there, and this aquifer it's not just what's under your land. It stretches for many, many acres. I'm not even sure we can determine how big that aquifer is. So that's another problem that I think they got it wrong. EPA defines an aquifer, a sole source aquifer, as an aquifer that supplies at least 50% of the drinking water for the service area. It supplies 100% of our water. Okay. Talks about liquid waste. They said, will there be any, generate any liquid waste? They check off no. They really haven't addressed exactly how they will deal with brush, grass. Will it be cut? Will it be mowed? Will it be sprayed? Will it be goats? Will it be who knows what? So I think we'll have to maybe assume that they're not going to use any chemicals, but I don't know for sure. They didn't state that. Additionally, as I said previously, I own actually 2 homes that are solely powered by solar power. In the winter, if those panels are even so much as 5 to 10 degrees from vertical, they accumulate snow. So I don't know how a 60-degree panel is going to do anything but collect snow, and I doubt that they're going to leave them at 60 degrees, which means then they would be tall. So here we are, 15, 20 feet above grade, 60 feet above the road, nearly 80 feet above the road. There is no tree that can grow in our lifetime that can screen that hill from that view. So Mr. Bushnell, Mr. Harris, the Garofalos, Mr. Morocco, and I think Ms. Fenster would be looking at it from the other side, not to mention everybody that's got to drive by this field of glass. Let's skip over some of that. And again, the point I made is, solar is great when it's working, but every megawatt of power that's produced, there has to be an immediate standby for megawatt. The battery system for that solar array is essentially National Grid, and we're all ratepayers. So when that equipment sits there idle, waiting for when the sun doesn't shine enough for these guys to get paid, that stuff has to kick in instantly. So the power company, which is essentially us, because all that cost is passed through to us with a small margin, has to be put into the capital structure. That's really not recognized. And that's the extent of my comments. I appreciate the extent of our time.
Ellison, how are we doing relative to online? We'll get back here.
We just have two comments online. Question, they're from Bart Wilson. What is the water use expectation for this project? And is the project hoping to use town water or wells for its water use? Has the planning board considered that Salt Springs is now being faced with a future quarry, private wells that will surely be affected by that, as well as now the solar field being proposed seems to beg the question about our water? And that's what we have online so far.
Okay. I saw someone standing up. Thank you, Emily. Hi there.
My name is Kate Bushnell, and I didn't plan to speak tonight, and I have no notes. But I will tell you that I'm compelled to speak. This proposed project, gentlemen, if you're listening, is directly across from my house. Just a little bit diagonal, but it's my view. I'm not happy about it. I'm hoping it doesn't go forward. I'm not here to talk to you about toxins. I'm not here to talk to you about the planes flying over. I don't want to repeat everything. You've heard so much, and I appreciate all the support tonight. I'm going to tell you that my 18-year-old is here. She's a youngster amongst all of us, and she cares about this project. And lastly, I'm just going to tell you, I really feel like crying right now, but I'm not going to. I want to tell you that we moved from Vermont, bucolic, gorgeous Vermont, where I drove my kids to school with a view of Lake Champlain twice a day. Gorgeous. I didn't take it for granted. I went to the grocery store. I had the Green Mountains to my right as I parked my car. Why did we choose this land? Why did we choose Salt Springs? Because we have 55 acres there. We have a gorgeous property. We have an orchard with 20 fruit trees. We have 2 gardens. I have chickens. We eat our own eggs. I'm a city girl, okay? We came here so that we all could enjoy the property. Caitlin, do you enjoy the property? Do you enjoy our views? And I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Thank you for all your support.
Is there anything further? Anyone else? Do you have someone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is David Morocco, and I own property at Salt Springs Road, 8490 Salt Springs Road, 8394. It actually consists of 4 different tax parcels, and I'm gonna try to keep this short. A lot of information has been asked. I feel that the application that's been put in front of us has a lot of holes in it, and there's just a lot of questions that this board, in your defense, can't really answer because you need professionals. We need to review this stuff. It's hard to ask questions when you're not doing this every day, the solar panel work. And these guys know what it's made of. I've learned so much in the last couple months getting involved in this, and the only reason why I knew this was all happening in Dugan Road was because I was here for other business approvals. And I'm glad that you got the letters out and people are now aware, and we're making people aware of what's going on here. I commend you on both boards and moving forward on the moratorium, and I hope that that happens soon. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and you need to be informed. The public needs to be informed. This is about the whole town. And we need to move. We need to get the answers by the professionals. My particular property, I'm just going to talk, I want to keep it simple. I would like to talk about the whole town and my grandchildren. I'm very concerned. This property that we have, that we're downstream, my son lives there also and has a beautiful home, and I have horses and a horse farm. I've got 4 wells on this property, on the 4 different well for each tax parcel. I am so concerned about what these solar panels are made of, and the toxins, and this stuff's real, and that's my water. And like Joe said, that's our only water source. We have like a war going on. It's the war zone up there between the water, the solar panels, and now we got a quarry coming. So there's a lot of planning that needs to take place in this part of town. We happen to be right in the middle of a lot of things moving, and let's do this right. And like someone else said, there's designated areas that you can do the solar. They're meant for abandoned industrial sites or quarries, maybe Consol's quarry. But I think you got a comprehensive plan that's going on. we've spent, I don't know if everyone knows, $150,000 are committed to the comprehensive plan. And, you know, you need to put zoning down, and you need to refer to your comprehensive plan to be able to do that. You have an obligation, I believe, to follow the comprehensive plan. And I've been through comprehensive plans. Some work, some don't work. But in this case, you need a comprehensive plan. You need it fast. You need to get zoning in place, and I don't think these should be approved by special use permits. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Louis Morocco, 8394 Salt Springs Road. Not going to take up too much of your time. My father and many other people already listed a lot of good reasons why we 100% oppose this project here at Salt Springs Road. I made a choice to stay in Manlius. I'm a resident here all my life. I care about our community. And I think that we're moving way too fast on some of these approvals that have already happened, and now the two that are in front of us here, specifically South Springs Road. So I would just ask that we seriously consider this moratorium, move forward with the moratorium. Let's really take some time with the comprehensive plan, identify areas in the community that this actually works in. This site is not one of them. We're farming that land. The neighbors are farming that land. You have Crawford Farms down the street. You have Julie Fenster's farm up on the other side of it. Our farm, I think it's a little out of control up there on South Springs Road right now. So we really need to start focusing on those issues. And that's all I have. We just need to spend some more time.
I'm set. One more.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name's Mike Fogel. I'm an environmental land use and zoning attorney with the firm Brown, Duke and Fogel. We're based in Syracuse. I'm here tonight representing David and Louis Morocco. Obviously, first of all, I just want to thank the board for having the public hearing. We heard a lot of really good comments tonight that I hope the board takes into consideration. First, just like I said, I'm a land use lawyer. We handle these types of matters really throughout New York State. So I think, first of all, I just want to commend the board for considering the enactment or considering making the recommendation to the town board for the moratorium. I think, again, this situation, when I first learned about it, it's really just screaming out for a moratorium. The moratorium is a really important land use tool that New York State law and courts have recognized for a board in a situation like this, where it's being faced with numerous applications that, while the zoning may technically permit it, it really didn't contemplate the size of systems that are currently being proposed. So I think the moratorium is really important here. If you look at the current law, it's really not sufficient to regulate these types of installations, protect the neighboring property owners. So I think the moratorium is perfect. We're already in the process of developing a comprehensive plan, so that'll give you the opportunity to, obviously review, among other uses, solar, determine the types of solar systems and the size of systems that the town wants to encourage in the town, and also to carefully review where exactly you want those solar systems to be within the town. So I think it's good. It's great. We're hitting the pause button and allow you to finish the comprehensive plan and then to develop zoning in accordance with that comprehensive plan and based on those recommendations to really determine what size system and where it's appropriate to be in the town. So I think that's great. Once these systems are approved and built, obviously it's too late. It wouldn't matter what the recommendations are in the comprehensive plan if this type of property has already been developed with solar, obviously. Now, with respect to this particular application, I looked at it. I'm an experienced land use attorney. I mean, in my opinion, it's woefully incomplete, at least what I've been able to review so far in preparing for tonight's public hearing. I don't think it's anywhere close or sufficient for this board to take any action or to make any of the required findings under the zoning law or under seeker, which I'm not sure if that's been mentioned tonight. Obviously, I'm sure the board and council's aware of it, but I don't know if everyone here is. Seeker is a state environmental quality review act, and it requires a board such as this planning board, anytime that it has an application in front of it, such as the solar installations, to take a look at the relevant environmental impacts. And we've talked about a lot of them today already, obviously. Visual impacts from stormwater, impacts to groundwater, the aquifer, noise, etc. It requires the board to identify those issues, take a hard look at those issues, and to ensure that for any project, that any of those impacts are mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. And I think the only way the board can really satisfy its obligations under seeker, under that state environmental law, is to require an environmental impact statement here. And for those of you that may not be aware, an environmental impact statement is a comprehensive environmental document that requires the applicant to address all relevant areas of environmental concern and to have those studied and to provide a comprehensive document addressing all of those issues, and then to allow for public comment from consultants to town engineers and other people. Now, it also requires the developer to consider project alternatives, which could involve alternatives to location, size of the system, those types of issues. And you only really get that hook through an environmental impact statement. So that's why I think that makes sense here. Now, the seeker regulations contain a list of actions that presumptively require an environmental impact statement. They're called type 1 actions. And here, based on the size of the system's a type 1 action. So it carries with it a presumption that an environmental impact statement should be required. Now, it requires the applicant, like I said, to address all the environmental areas of concern that are being discussed tonight in a comprehensive document, not just try to address them piecemeal by issues here or there. Now, with respect to the environmental issues that supposedly have already been addressed, and I don't know, a lot of them didn't seem to be available on the website. So they mentioned a few that I didn't find in my review. So with respect to visual, I mean, I didn't personally see any information that's been provided. It doesn't look like it's really been analyzed at all. I think this board should require them to prepare a visual study consistent with the DEC's visual noise policy, which should include a glare study. Now, they mentioned they prepared one. It wasn't on the website, so it wasn't available for me to review and comment on. I don't know if anyone else had the opportunity to review it, but all of their application materials should be made available for future public hearings and future comment. A visual, obviously, we think that's big impact. That's a significant impact. It's of concern to anybody living on Salt Springs Road. Obviously, it's a pristine area. That's why a lot of people moved there and built their houses there. And now they're going to be looking at 13,000 solar panels. So that's significant. And they've identified in their environmental assessment form that there are certain significant visual receptors within 5 miles. Those should be considered. If you look at DEC's visual policy, the reason why they ask for everything within 5 miles is because the DEC visual policy requires an applicant to determine the potential visual impacts on not only those in the vicinity, but within a 5-mile radius, including significant visual receptors. So that's visual. With respect to wetlands, they mentioned that they performed a jurisdictional determination of JD. But what they didn't do, at least I haven't seen it, is provide any of the correspondence from DEC or the Army Corps of Engineers concurring with their consultants' jurisdictional determination. So the board should definitely ask for that information, and once it's available, should be provided to people for review and comment. Stormwater is another big issue. They mentioned in the environmental assessment form that there's going to be runoff flow to adjacent properties. They should be required to quantify and analyze those impacts. Same with respect to noise. While they indicate that operational noise levels may not exceed the ambient level, and the ambient is just the normal noise level if you went up there during the day, but as far as I can tell, they haven't actually performed any noise analysis involving gathering, actually measuring what the ambient levels are, and then projecting the actual noise levels from the operations. They should do that so we can actually determine whether or not there are in fact any noise impacts. And these are things that should be studied, like I said, in an environmental impact statement, not just submitted piecemeal by the applicant. Now, there's a significant amount of prime agricultural lands that are going to be lost. If you look at the county planning letter, at least for the earlier application that was considered today for the CB North America, it contains a recommendation from the county that those prime agricultural lands not be disturbed. And there's also within the same county letter, at least for CBE, a recommendation that the planning board require a glare study to be provided. So if it hasn't, we requested the planning board ask the applicant to provide that. I'd also note that with respect to loss of prime agricultural lands, that there is precedent for requiring an environmental impact statement just for that environmental impact area alone. Obviously, we think there's far more than just that, but there's at least precedent for that. Just last year in the town of Portlandville in Portland County, they required an environmental impact statement for a 2-megawatt project on 12 acres. And it was mostly based on impacts associated with prime agricultural land. So I suggest the planning board might want to take a look at that as a model for the review that it's going to require for this application. So again, we think just with respect to seeker, and that's why I totally disagree that from a legal basis, the board's not in a position whatsoever to make any determination under seeker on the application because it can't satisfy its obligations under seeker without, in my opinion, requiring an environmental impact statement. So we would submit that the planning board should issue a seeker positive declaration, finding that there's at least one significant adverse environmental impact and requiring the applicant to prepare an environmental impact statement. The environmental impact statement will also give the board the opportunity to consider cumulative impacts, and that will allow you to evaluate cumulative impacts of not only this solar system, but the one on Duguid Road that we talked about earlier. Those should really be considered together, and you should evaluate the significance of those environmental conditions in a cumulative way. Now, with respect to the decommissioning plan, I didn't see it available yet. I'd asked for that to be made available. And I'd really encourage you to have an independent evaluation done on the true costs of decommissioning, not today or tomorrow, but 25, 30 years when this system's run out its useful life. And also note it would be useful to do some research with surrounding towns to see how they handle decommissioning. I'm familiar with at least one 5-megawatt system in a town in Onondaga County where they required cash to be put on, not just a bond, but cash to be put in the bank. It was proximity of $900,000. And that was for a similar size system. It also suggests that the planning board request an access agreement with the developer, assuming this gets approved, obviously, which we don't think it should, but an access agreement that would allow the town to access and decommission the site if for some reason the solar company isn't around when that time comes. And it's really important that that be built into the access agreement, and also that the planning board be given the opportunity to draw down on that letter of credit or that cash deposit in order to fund the decommissioning. The other thing that's really important is that the planning board really needs to understand who exactly is behind this project. I mean, as far as the LLC goes and any other parties that are involved, we really need to understand who those people are, because assuming the board ever got to a point where it felt that it could approve the project, you're going to want to impose special use permit conditions and require other commitments. And it's important to know that the people who are actually claiming to be the applicant are going to be around, that you're going to actually be able to enforce those conditions, assuming that they don't comply with them. That's really critical. So the only other thing I would add is that I think it's important, especially because it seems like the applicant submitted information, or at least was referencing it, that wasn't made available, that the planning board make those available to the public, and also leave this public hearing open until it's prepared to make a determination on the application, because the public should be given the opportunity to continue to review and comment on any documents that the applicant may submit. So So we respectfully request that the planning board keep the public comment period open throughout the course of this project. Thank you, and that's all I have.
Can I get a minute?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Ken Sieperman. I hadn't come prepared to speak, but I wanted to reinforce one point that was made very well by Joe. I live at 5044 McClinton Road, so I'm a half a mile south, about half a mile south. So I'm appreciative of what my neighbors on Salt Springs will see, because I drive out that most every day. That open, today is an open hayfield. The point that Joe made, having lived there 40 years, the only point I want to address is the mitigation of what the array will look like. They talked about a 12, 14, or 16 foot and a berm, and then an industrial chain link fence with razor wire. And I understand the need to protect that. So you're essentially inserting on that corner a prison kind of atmosphere. Now, in the proposal, they said they could mitigate that with a berm and trees. I've tried to plant things in my 40 years there on Salt Springs Road. That whole area, that raised area, is generally referred to as dry hill. And the reason it's dry hill is, depending upon where you dig, it's either a foot, 18 inches, or you're in limestone, solid limestone. So you're gonna have to drill to install these things. So once you get that, if you get that installation done, how do you try to mitigate that? It now has a prison fence around it, looks like Jamesville. Put some trees in. And 18 inches of topsoil, that's not gonna grow. And they can generate a computer generated proposal of what it may look like in 5 years, or 10 years, or 12 years. I've tried to grow things in 5 years, in 10 years, in 12 years. You're gonna have that chain link fence visible. So that's what you're subjecting this neighborhood to. In good faith, they may believe that they can mitigate that with trees and shrubs and other growth. But in that area, the topsoil that's available won't support that kind of growth. It just won't.
I grow trees.
Me too. I've tried to. In my time there, several houses have come in the area, and I know what they have to do to put a drain field in or dig a basement. You've done it.
Sir, would you please direct your comments to the board?
I understand.
Not engage in conversation.
I know what you have to do to put a drain field or other subsurface construction in. And that's not gonna happen without drilling. And that's what you're subjugating the entire aquifer to. Because all of us up there, everybody that has a well, they're 300 feet. Because you're in the solid limestone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. My name is Stephen Brown. I just recently moved to Salt Springs, 8171 Salt Springs Road, and I didn't know what I was moving into. It's been an interesting year up there. I'll describe myself as a scientist, economist, environmentalist. I grew up in this area. I've lived in Vermont. I've lived in New Hampshire. I chose to live on Salt Springs Road because of the environment that it has provided. The biggest thing I want is a speed zone out there, just to slow things down. However, I think when we look at tonight, I want everybody to leave here with common sense. What are we looking at here? And I think that they actually, the developers kind of made our point. There's only a few places you can put things in this county, okay, or in this town. And so they're trying to put, a square peg in a round hole. And that's really what the problem is when you try to do something up in Salt Springs. That's not the right place for this. There are water issues. There are viewing issues. There are, multiple problems with this site. And I think that when we try to put the square peg in the round hole, we need to slow down, put the moratorium in place. But I don't even think it needs to go to that point. I think common sense has to take over. And as a board, we need to look at it and say, listen, this isn't the right place. If you drive through New Hampshire and Vermont, you don't see a solar field in the middle of a neighborhood. You don't. You see them. They've done it the right way. And this isn't the right way in our neighborhood. And I hope people can kind of think that, throughout. There's not one of us in this room who doesn't want renewable energy. I guarantee it. Everybody wants to have renewable energy. I drive up past where I grew up and you see those windmills and you say, listen, there's people who like them, there's people who don't like them. They're not in your neighborhoods. They're on the hills. They're rented out through the farmers. And guess what? That's renewable energy in a good way. This is not the right place. It's not the right. No one's saying that renewable energy is wrong. No one's saying that we just don't have the right place for it. They're trying to put it in a place that it doesn't need to be. And I think we just have to step back and think about it as what's common sense and let the common sense take over. Not the lawyers, not the, all these different things. I think you just have to say what's common sense. And, we have to listen to everybody and it's all driven by money, and listen, everybody wants to make money. We have to survive. But this decision shouldn't be driven solely on money or taxes or in lieu of taxes or whatever those payments are. This is about our neighborhood. This is about what's right for this spot, and I truly believe it's. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lisa Corso. I live on 8332 Salt Springs Road. And I wasn't going to say anything because I don't like to talk in public, and I sent an email to the board that you could read. But this says it all. At least the kid from New York showed up. They didn't send one person here to look in our faces. This is our land. This is our water. This is our road. And not one of them showed up, and they all tuned out as soon as we started talking. And Andrew Day pops in every once in a while to see if we're done talking.
Oh, he's back.
Going on kind of long at this point. And I understand we've got a couple more remote ones.
They are follow-up to questions with the same speaker from before.
Okay.
She wants to know how she's going to get her answers to her questions. And then she also said, Barb Wilson again, I agree with Dave Morocco. From my perspective, the comprehensive plan should be finished before any of the following happens. Solar field, quarry, town water. These proposals will cause our environment to be torn apart. And I would like to know how the planning board and the town board can ethically proceed with any of these plans before the comprehensive plan is done. I don't believe it can.
Okay. Any other comments?
No. We're down to 9 attendees.
Folks, are we exhausted?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say one thing. I have an active petition here signed by 134 members of Salt Springs.
Secretary, and we'll make that part of the record.
Thank you.
Okay. And in addition to everything we have heard tonight, here in person and on record, we have received several emails. We've received multiple letters as well. These have all been passed and circulated amongst all of the board members. So there's more that we have heard than you may have think we have heard. We're going to listen to everything and make a proper determination. if we're permitted to. And when I say that, I mean the town board may very well issue a moratorium, which is gonna prohibit us from proceeding forward on any of the solar plans. So that is where we stand at present. No, sir, that's the town board.
That's right.
It'll be the town board.
Thank you. I'll make the motion to keep the public hearing open.
I was hoping somebody would.
Second.
Mike Leroy seconded it. All in favor? Any opposed?
Can I make a clarification, just so that people in this room understand? The planning board is dealing with the solar farms, the solar arrays. The town board is dealing with the water project, and the quarry needs a zone change to move forward. Again, that's a town board issue. So the only thing that the planning board is dealing with at this point are these solar arrays, these solar farms. Just for clarification, so that everybody knows who's on first.
Yep. In light of this, Fred, did you want to make a motion?
I'll second Fred's motion.
Motion by Fred to adjourn, motion second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
I want to thank everybody from the public who came tonight and talked to us. Thank you.